And we kick off this evening with a look at the cinema.
I'm not a complicated man. I like cinema.
It's beautiful, beautiful cinema.
Cinema history come to life.
I found my solace in the small cinema I went to every Thursday night.
I'm a professor of cinema.
I go to the cinema for the stories.
There was no competition between the cinema and seminar.
I mean, it's not within the realm of conventional cinema.
And now,
here's Pace and Johnson
with a cinema review.
It is Monday, March 9th, 2026, and thank you for joining me for another episode of Cinemaster's Reviews. I'm going to adjust my camera just for a second, but thank you all for joining me. Your last episode of pre-Oscar night for 2026. Really excited for that. But we're not here to talk about the Oscars. We are here to talk about some movies that came out this weekend. We are going to be reviewing The Bride as well as Pixar's latest Hoppers. I say we jump right into the show, starting with our first review of the night, that being The Bride, directed by Maggie Gyllenhaal. This is the latest film from the famous actress Maggie Gyllenhaal. Her last film came out in 2021, The Lost Daughter. Really, really solid film there. And she's back in the director's seat, directing obviously the sequel to the Mary Shelley novel Frankenstein. Once again, just to give a brief synopsis of the story, we are following Frankenstein's monster, played by Christian Bale, and he has become very, very lonely, being the only monster of his kind. So he finds a doctor, played by Annette Bening, and he asks her, "Hey, can you please bring back this woman who has just recently been murdered, Ida, and played by Jessie Buckley?" And Ida sort of rediscovers herself through this second life, and her and Frankenstein's monster might fall in love. Who knows? Maggie Gyllenhaal's last film, The Lost Daughter, was not a film I loved, but I think it showed promise. And when I saw that this movie was announced as this big, bombastic, borderline musical retelling of The Bride of Frankenstein, I got pretty excited. I wanted to see what we were going to get. And I'll be honest, this movie is a big swing from Maggie Gyllenhaal, and I applaud that Warner Brothers allowed her to make this movie. But I think there are points where, as a film reviewer, I do have to call out when a director gets too overindulgent and sort of loses their sense of creatively. Because while The Bride does have things I like, I can't call it anything other than an absolute tonal and script-wise mess from what we got. There are things I liked in it. I'll get to those, but I think from the opening scene of this film, which does not involve any of the characters we see throughout the movie, it involves Jessie Buckley playing Mary Shelley, narrating the story in a very classical actress bravado way. And the second we saw this, I was like, oh no, are we in trouble? And while I don't think the movie ever quite reaches the lows as when it cuts back to Mary Shelley narrating this movie, I think the fact that is an element should probably tell you the type of movie you are going to be getting, where it's going to be trying a lot of things, a lot of stuff isn't going to be landing. And unfortunately, I just think this is just a product of Maggie Gyllenhaal trying to do maybe too much at a time. I want to talk about some of the good things about this movie. One, when Jessie Buckley is playing the titular character of The Bride, I think she is very, very good. I love when you first see her as a human. She is just sort of this ordinary person, just sort of living her life. And the second she does come back to life as this woman of the dead, seeing her sort of rediscover herself, Jessie Buckley, I think, is one of the best actresses working today, and I think she brings a lot to that specific character. Again, I think when she's playing Mary Shelley, I think it's just some bad choices she was making and maybe just bad direction. I just don't think any actress could have made that role work. But when Jessie Buckley is playing The Bride of Frankenstein, I think she is very, very good. Christian Bale, he's not an actor we see a ton of anymore. He's very selective about the roles he takes, but when we do see him, I do think he is still one of the best actors working today, and he is having a lot of fun as Frankenstein's monster, or as he's known in this movie, Frank. Really funny detail. I'll be honest, I did get a kick out of the fact that Frankenstein's monster is just named Frank. Whenever he is given the ability to just yell and just go crazy in this movie, I think he takes those opportunities really, really well. He's an actor that's known for taking his craft very, very seriously. And while he's still taking this role seriously, I can tell he's having a lot of fun with this role of this like big bombastic like quasi musical. I know this movie was described as a musical when it was in pre-production. It's not a musical. There are some major dance numbers that genuinely feel very unnecessary. We'll talk about that. But for the most part, it has this very like bombastic attitude to it. You see these characters just going around America, committing different crimes, becoming wanted because of their murders, and watching Christian Bale in this just scream and just go ballistic. Really, really fun there. The other element I will say, I undoubtedly do think this movie is very, very well made. I love the gothic tone it adds to 1930s America. Most of the movie takes place in Chicago and New York and these big like urban cities. And just how it films like this really big architecture, all the costumes, like the big bright reds, all the cool makeup, whether it's like the black makeup splattered on these different characters, that sets a really, really nice tone. And the music, Hildur Guðnadóttir is, as far as I'm concerned, one of the best composers working today. And her music here is very, very good. It does set a very, very eerie mood to the film while also creating whiplash, purposeful whiplash at points when the score does get very, very loud and you're watching an action scene. And Hildur is probably most famous for winning the Oscar for the first Joker movie. She also did the score for Joker Folie à Deux. Honestly, a lot of this movie I feel like is trying to mimic what those two movies did. Take that for what you will. Hildur also did the score for Tar, which is a really great score. And from just a pure technical aspect, I can't say that this movie is bad. Where again, I think this movie fails is unfortunately in the script writing portion as well as the directorial portion. I think it's a real shame that you have this movie that around the halfway mark, or probably even a little earlier than that, becomes this like crime road trip movie where the bride causes a murder and both the bride and Frank have to go on the run because they are now wanted in all parts of America. And the fact that I'm watching a crime road trip movie where these two characters just go from city to city, committing different crimes, murdering different people, and I'm bored watching that, that is a huge issue. Like this movie should be like, I wish I felt the way I felt when I'm watching Bonnie and Clyde or when I'm watching Badlands, but just in a more gothic setting, a gothic tone. But I'm watching the craziest things and I feel nothing. My heart rate never really felt like it was getting over like 80. And I just felt bored by the end of the movie. I think it's way too long. And a movie with this like just like batshit way of telling its story, it feels like I feel like the fact that I am this bored is a big telling of, I think Maggie Gyllenhaal was really concerned about just throwing things at the audience, but it just feels empty in what we get, because if what we were getting felt meaningful, I would at least walk away feeling like, okay, I'm really at the very least, I can't look away from this train wreck. I just think it was like kind of a boring movie, which for Maggie Gyllenhaal adapting the Bride of Frankenstein story, that feels like borderline criminal to me. The movie keeps cutting back to two detectives chasing the bride and Frank. Those two detectives played by Peter Sarsgaard and Penelope Cruz. This storyline has no reason to be in this film. I think these characters add really nothing to the film. It sort of adds to the theme of what I feel like Gyllenhaal was trying to go with the bride, of like, with Penelope Cruz's character being like a detective in training. It kind of shows how like her as a woman is trying to be liberated in the same way that the bride is trying to be liberated. but it just came off as a really just tacked on part of the story. I'll be honest, Penelope Cruz is an actress I really, really enjoy. I think she was actually kind of bad here. It felt like she really didn't have a grasp on the character she was playing, and it just felt very, very one-dimensional. And there was nothing really to grasp. And every time they cut back to them, I was just like, why are we focusing so much on these characters? And I feel like if you cut that entire story out, you have a much more manageable runtime of a movie, which isn't even that long. It's like a little over 2 hours, but it feels much longer than that. John Magaro is in this movie. He's really given nothing to do. Jake Gyllenhaal plays this actor that Frank really admires, and that goes nowhere. Honestly, like, I know a lot of movies get crapped on when they do just add like, oh, these characters really love old classic films, just because it feels like it's trying to tug at the heartstrings of film fans. That usually doesn't bother me because I kind of like that. This is the first time where I was like, okay, this feels really, really unnecessary in what we are getting, and I was just rolling my eyes anytime we see like the Bride and Frank just in a movie theater, just watching old classic musical numbers, and I just thought you honestly could have cut all of that out. As I said, this movie has like a few like major like dance numbers where the movie just breaks out into song, and you see the choreography being displayed. And while it's not bad choreography, it just doesn't feel like it adds anything to this story. The last major thing I wanted to say is, for a movie that's trying to, while the Bride and the Frank are our protagonists, it's also trying to portray them as monsters, as criminals, and you kind of do want them to get caught. The only issue is 95% of the characters that the Bride and Frank kill are characters that are trying to rape and murder the bride. And when I see Frank or the bride kill these rapists, my first thought isn't like, wow, they did this horrible thing. My first thought is, okay, you killed a rapist. That guy was a horrible guy. Like, in no way am I supposed to, am I going to root against them? And I think if you're trying to make these characters feel monstrous in any way, you got to do a little bit more than that. And I see what Maggie Gyllenhaal was trying to do of taking the story of this character. Like, the Bride of Frankenstein is a very iconic character, but I guess but she's literally called the Bride of Frankenstein. So she obviously is not an independent character from Frankenstein's monsters. So Maggie Gyllenhaal was trying to make the story about this character gaining independence and discovering who they are. I just found it really, really unnecessary, and I think it was trying to do way too many things at once. Again, there are most of my favorite films are when these ambitious filmmakers are given the chance to give their full vision. This is just unfortunately one of those instances where I think I do think someone needed to rein Maggie Gyllenhaal in just a little bit and take that obvious great vision she had in the technical elements of this film and put them towards the story element and try to find something a little bit more interesting to say. If I were to rate this movie on a scale of 0 to 10 videotapes, 0 being awful and 10 being amazing, honestly, the more I sit on this movie, the more I really, the bad aspects of it really jump out to me. And I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10. I think this was a pretty bad movie. Again, you have 2 very good performances at the center of the movie. I think the movie looks very nice. But when you have a script that is this poor and this just overstuffed and just themes by the end that just has you rolling your eyes like, really, this is what you're making the movie about? I can't help but just call it out and say that I do think this movie is an unfortunate failure. Again, if you have any interest in this movie, it's weird, even with it being bad, I'd honestly say go see it in theaters because it is such a technical marvel in what you are watching. But I do think overall, if you don't have any interest in this movie, it's not one that I would in any way say go rush out and see, because I do think it is a pretty I do think it is a pretty bad movie. And honestly, as someone that did consider this one of my more anticipated movies for the year, probably one of my bigger disappointments that I've seen this year, obviously in this very, very early year. But yeah, I say we jump right into the second review of the night, that being Hoppers, the new film from Pixar Animation Studio. I don't have the exact number, but they've made obviously tons of movies since the first Toy Story in the 90s. This is directed by Daniel Chong. He was the guy that actually directed the Bow short in front of Toy Story 4. Really nice short if you saw that. But this film follows a young college activist by the name of Mabel. She is someone that really loves nature and really loves animals in general. And she lives in a town that is about to where the ravine that many of the animals used to live in is going to be getting destroyed in order for new houses and just new buildings to be built there by the mayor Jerry, voiced by John Hamm. Mabel is really trying to fight this, even though there aren't any animals there. She feels like this is just such like an important part of the town of Beaverton, and she wants to protect this. And wouldn't you know it, the doctor that she works for, they are working on a new technology where humans can actually put their sense of reality into a robotic animal. Shenanigans happen. She ends up getting put into the body of a beaver, and she ends up getting thrown out into nature, and she now has a mission to befriend the other animals and find a way to stop the mayor from his maybe not completely dastardly plan, but of destroying this empty ravine, but hopefully stop him in a way to find the way for the animals to for the animals and the humans to coexist, which is an important theme in this film. The first thing I want to say about this movie is, for a studio with such an excellent track record of films like Pixar, like regardless of what you think about their latest films, I think if you look at like their earliest slate, like they have masterpiece after masterpiece after masterpiece. I genuinely think Hoppers, while not being like one of the best films they've made by any means, I do think it might be one of the funniest films. Like the more I think about this movie, the more I think like the jokes of it hit really, really well. It has some form of like darkness to it, where like it really gets into like the rules of the pond, where we meet George, the king of the mammals in the pond, played by voiced by Bobby Moynihan, and he essentially says like, hey, look, we are all trying to coexist. At the same time, our first rule is if you need to eat something, you got to eat something. And we just see an animal just like eat a fish that had just been talking that moment. And it's like has a lot of like dark moments to it that are used in really, really humorous ways. Once again, Pixar's really getting more into like fast animation style, and this is once again used for that. I do think the character of Mabel, while not being like a complete outcast like Elio was in their last film, Mabel is still a character that feels a little bit on edge and is always very like hyper and is always like very like strong with their cause. And I think a lot of humor comes from that, just as a lot of humor comes from all the elements of this movie. The other thing I want to applaud this film for is I think the world it builds is actually a really, really solid world for an animated movie. You might think with seeing all these talking animals, does it feel like Zootopia in any way? And it really doesn't. But the fun part is we learn that like while George is like the king of the mammals, each different like species of animals has their own king. Like the king of the king of the snake of the reptiles is a snake. The queen of the amphibians is a frog. The ultimate king, the king of the insects, is a butterfly. And just how it works in like the whole like hierarchy of all these animals is really, really fun. Also, a lot of the voice performances are really, really great. As I said, Bobby Moynihan, really fun. The character of George is, I applaud Pixar for making this character that seems dumb at first. Like George has these big like buck beaver teeth, and like you think like, okay, is he just going to be like this incompetent king? But like the movie does a really great job of making you understand and root for his line of thinking. Like, hey, I want all the animals to coexist. I want the humans to coexist, even though they're coming into our land. Hopefully, they're going to be nice to us, and we can coexist. And obviously, Mabel has to say like, "Hey, can't be that naive, but I do like what you're going with. Let's see what we can do." And so yeah, Bobby Moynihan's really good, and also John Hamm. John Hamm plays the mayor Jerry as like at first the slimiest mayor that like is always getting in fights with Mabel, which is funny because like Mabel's just this like 19-year-old teenager, and it's just fun watching this character just constantly argue with this with this teenager every single day, and you can tell like he's really annoyed with how she's affecting her campaign. But yeah, I do think John Hamm does a lot of fun stuff. And without spoiling, that the character of Jerry is a really fun character because while that character could be just like your conniving, scheming villain, does a little bit more than that. And that is something that I do want to applaud this movie for is, while I don't think the villain of this movie is great, I do like that Pixar was ballsy enough to say like, hey, this is an animated film. Let's actually give our story a villain and an antagonist instead of the antagonist just being generational trauma, which we've seen from a lot of Pixar movies. Again, I think a lot of those Pixar movies have been good. I love Turning Red, but I think that's probably the prime example of a Pixar movie where the villain is just trauma of the main characters. This one does have a straight up villain, and I do think that is a really strong choice, even though the villain isn't great. The other aspect I don't think is great is we are constantly cutting back to characters. Seems like a theme with this week of the main doctor that is funding the Hopper procedure, who shows Mabel that you could put your human consciousness into an animal. You keep cutting back to her and her scientists that are trying to track down Mabel because they don't trust her at all. Every time we kept coming back, I was just like, okay, can we get back to the animals? Can we get back to Mabel and everything? Because I just didn't really care about them. Kathy Najimy from Hocus Pocus voices the main doctor. She's solid in the movie, but yeah, that was probably the like low point in the film where I was just like, okay, these characters don't really add a ton to the film. And even by the end, I was just like, okay, why are they here? But yeah, the last thing I just want to say is I think this movie does have a very nice message about just wanting to see the good in people and trying to give them the chance to work with you and work together in order to build a community where everyone can live together, even though that does seem naive and you have characters pointing that out throughout the movie. I love that Mabel as a character is just like, well, we can try. We can always try to work with them. I don't want to spoil how this movie ends, but I think it does end in a really nice way that is a really solid message for kids and that adults can appreciate too. If I were to rate this movie on a scale of 0 to 10 videotapes, I'm going to go high. I'm going to go an 8 out of 10. I think this is a really, really great animated film. Again, nowhere near the best from Pixar, but I think Pixar just has like set such an echelon for the like S tier of their studio. But yeah, I think it's a really funny film. I think this is really has a really nice message to it about protecting the environment. It doesn't feel like preaching it anyway. And I think regardless of whether you're a kid or an adult, I think you can enjoy this, which is always kind of what you're looking for with an animated film. Again, if you do have kids, I would recommend you go take them to it because you are going to be entertained as well. And then yeah, when you do have the ability to see this, I would recommend you do go see this movie. But thank you all for watching this week. Remember to rate this, remember to like this video and subscribe to the video store. It helps grow our channel a lot. Next week, I'm going to be off because I won't have time to see 2 movies, but I will be back the week after that. Really excited because Project Hail Mary comes out. I've been hearing really, really great things about that. And I believe Ready or Not 2, Here I Come comes out. So that should be an exciting show in 2 weeks. I'm going to be taking a little break. Hope you all have a great time watching the Oscars. And as always, watch more movies.
And the award for most vapid film review of the century goes to...
Okay, movie review. Okay, I thought it was beauty.
And he's now in cinema hell, where one day we'll all be reunited.
This is me at the Regal Cinema crying as I did through much of the film.